Seek first to understand and then be understood. Context is definitive. Boom. In that moment, complete shift of context. That everything in our experience, every circumstance that we see or encounter, everything that sort of hooks us emotionally or grinds our gears, as you would, is really a reflection of part of our own disowned parts. Another question that I get asked, which often makes me smile, is, how do you go about understanding other people, especially when you think what they're doing is wrong? Now, the reason I smile about that is because there's so many different ways to answer this question. One of the things to really take note of, though, is that I want to introduce you to a concept called categories. There are categories of judgment. There are categories of understanding, and some are appropriate and some are not. And if you see somebody who is acting out of accordance with, let's just say, your projections and your model of the world as to what you think they should or shouldn't be doing, then one has to, first of all, realize a fundamental truth that they're not doing it on purpose. They are acting out their scenario based on their thoughts, their belief system, their model of the world. In other words, everybody does things for reasons. It's a psychological fact. Now, unfortunately, they may not be your reasons and they may not be my reasons. But when we understand people do things for reasons, rather than jump straight in and say, oi, one has to then step back and say, okay, what are the reasons I think this person's doing? Why? Because context is definitive, my friends. You want to tattoo that on your eyelids. Context is everything. And when we judge somebody based upon content without taking into account context, then we are missing all of the backstory. And backstory means everything. Why would you go and see somebody who is grabbing a child by the scruff of the neck and dragging them, and you say, oh my God, look what that person's doing. But if you see that they just dragged them out of the way of a moving bus, you'd have a different level of context, different level of understanding. The great Stephen Covey, who wrote the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, somebody I was blessed to share the stage with before he died. I remember him telling the story about when it first really was brought home to him, this concept, and he wrapped it up in one of the 7 habits he called seek first to understand and then be understood. And it really dawned on him when he was riding a subway and you got all of these kids running around sort of screaming, and the father was there and he just wasn't controlling the kids and he was getting annoyed, and he'd had a hard day at work, and he really just turned around to the guy and says, look, any chance, can you control your kids? And the guy looked up at him and said, I'm so sorry. He says, we just got back from the hospital. Their mother just died. He says, and right now I don't think they know how to handle it. Boom. In that moment, complete shift of context. So when we look at other people and we think they're doing something wrong, the first thing to do before we jump in and say, oi, is to try to understand what is the context, what is the backstory, what are the reasons they're doing it for? Are they coming from hurt? Are they coming from a lack of understanding? Are they coming from a place that, if you understood, you would agree? And that's really a reflection of our own stuff, which is the next part I want to talk about in terms of categories. There's one category in terms of understanding, at the level that other people do things for different reasons. There's another whole category where we start to realize that everything in our experience, every circumstance that we see or encounter, everything that sort of hooks us emotionally or grinds our gears, as you would, is really a reflection of part of our own disowned parts. Now, the challenge as to why people don't like hearing that is because it imposes upon us a self-responsibility to look in the mirror and see what our weaknesses are, what our areas to work on are. And most people don't want to do that. It's far easier and takes far less courage to be able to point fingers of blame at other people and say, well, you'd be better if you did this, or if you'd be better if you were like that. We see it all the time in relationships. I've certainly been guilty of that myself in many relationships. And to be able to say, okay, this person shouldn't be late. I fought traffic, I got up early, I could have stayed in bed an extra 20 minutes. Why aren't they here? Classic example. We start imposing our model of the world in terms of punctuality on other people. Well, A, we don't know the context, but B, what's really going on there is what a part of our disowned self is showing up in our face that we're not willing to include. See, if we are willing to not be unpunctual ourselves, what's going on there? We're instantly going to judge other people. If somebody's late for our meeting, we're going to slag them off. We're going to criticize them. We're going to label that person a certain way, being disrespectful or lazy or whatever it may be. And what we're really saying is we can't accept that part of ourselves. And I'm here to tell you that until you can accept that part of yourself, all of these scenarios in the outer world are going to show up to remind you. Everyone's trying to be on this personal development world where we start running off on this, oh, I want to be better, I want to do this, I want to do that to improve myself. And the method or the path that most people take is by being able to ignore their weaknesses or work on their weaknesses, not include them. I'll give you a classic example. If you open a dictionary, there are so many words in the English dictionary that can describe character traits. Some would be positive character traits, others we could deem as negative character traits. But are you or are you not at some point in your life, or have you not been every single one of those? So if somebody shows up who's angry, or somebody cuts you up in traffic, have we not been that person? But because we're not that person at that particular time, we want to judge somebody. So how do you understand that? You first understand that A, they do it for reasons, and if we were them, that person, at that time, with their model of the world, thinking their thoughts, with their history, we would do exactly the same. Fact. Psychological fact. And until we can own that, we have absolutely no right to judge. Until you can put yourself in somebody else's shoes and come to the same conclusion that would lead to the same actions and behaviors, then we have absolutely no right to judge. But of course, that would take us being able to step outside of our comfort zone, and it's far easier to just point fingers and blame, as we've all done. So understanding that life offers us a consistent 24/7 mirror, a feedback mechanism that allows us to see where our disowned parts are, where our weak spots are, where our areas of judgment are, allows us to really open our mind and come from a place of understanding, not compassion. And that, my friends, is probably the best advice I could offer when it comes to really trying to figure out where other people are at.